The moment your wife starts rehearsing lies instead of stories, the marriage already has a body count. Melissa dragged her champagne-colored suitcase across the hardwood floor while checking her phone every 6 seconds. Thumb moving fast. Tiny smile. Screen tilted away from me like classified intel. I sat at the kitchen island with my laptop open beside a stack of printed bank statements she thought I never saw. 3 weeks earlier, a charge from Aspen Ridge Resort hit our joint Amex at 11:14 p.m. 2 guests. Ocean View Suite. For nights. Melissa claimed her friends booked a spa package for a girl's getaway. Cute story. Problem was, her friend Andrea spent that same weekend posting winery photos from Napa. Different state. Different time zone. I traced every transaction after that. Flight confirmations. Rideshare receipts. A $312 dinner reservation under Kevin Carter's corporate card. Same resort. Same dates. Same check-in window. People think affairs explode because of sex. They explode because cheaters grow lazy with logistics. Melissa used to balance every dollar down to grocery receipts. Then suddenly she stopped asking why I reviewed our accounts twice a month. Guilt changes habits before it changes behavior. She grabbed her sunglasses from the counter and finally looked at me. I'll text when we land. Calm voice. Practiced voice. The same tone she used during conference calls when she wanted clients to trust bad numbers. I closed the folder slowly. Tell Kevin I said hi. The suitcase stopped rolling. Her face drained so fast it looked surgical. Every muscle in her shoulders locked at once. For the first time in 17 years, my wife looked at me like she had entered the wrong house. What? She asked too quickly. Weak recovery. Her pupils tightened. Left hand squeezed the suitcase handle hard enough to whiten the knuckles. I took a sip of coffee and watched the panic spread behind her eyes. Kevin, I repeated. Tall guy. Marketing division. Divorced last year. Drives the black Audi with the dealer tag frame still attached. Silence hit the kitchen like pressure sealing a vault. Melissa forced a laugh that sounded brittle around the edges. You're acting weird. There it was. Step 1 in every collapsing affair. Redirect. Make the husband sound unstable before facts start breathing. 2 months ago, she still touched my shoulder while walking past me. Then Kevin entered the picture, and suddenly her phone traveled face down everywhere, even inside our own house. Her gym schedule doubled. Passwords changed. AirPods stayed glued to her ears during laundry. Tiny shifts. Tiny fractures. I work logistics for a regional freight company. Patterns pay my mortgage. Deviations build investigations. I opened my laptop and rotated the screen toward her. Resort confirmation. Timestamp transfers. Kevin's corporate reimbursement form. A scanned boarding pass tied to her SkyMiles account. Her lips parted slightly when she saw the PDF headers. She had no idea I accessed the cloud backup linked to our shared tax folder. Ethan, she whispered. That tone used to mean intimacy. Now it sounded like damage control. I leaned back in the chair and folded my arms. Relax, I said calmly. You should head out soon. Kevin already checked in yesterday. That was the moment the power shifted. Melissa reached for her phone instantly. Screen lit up. Kevin Carter calling. Melissa declined Kevin's call after the third vibration, but the damage had already spread across her face. Fear leaves fingerprints faster than guilt. She placed the phone on the counter carefully, like sudden movement might trigger an explosion hidden somewhere inside the kitchen. You went through my accounts? She asked. Her voice cracked halfway through the sentence. Interesting choice of words. Not our accounts. My accounts. Ownership always reveals itself during panic. I closed the laptop and slid the printed statements back into the folder. Joint accounts, I corrected. Shared taxes. Shared assets. Shared liability. Marriage turns secrets into financial exposure real fast. Melissa swallowed hard and glanced toward the hallway mirror. People check mirrors when their identity starts collapsing. Kevin is a coworker, she said quietly. That is all. I nodded once. Calm. Measured. Then you picked a strange man to share a one-bedroom suite with. Her jaw tightened instantly. Small twitch near the temple. Another tell. I spent 20 years managing freight routes across 5 states. Delays, discrepancies, inventory drift. Every system leaves patterns. Every liar leaves timing errors. Melissa used to think emotional betrayal stayed invisible if nobody caught physical proof. She never understood how modern affairs bleed data through subscriptions, cloud backups, airline rewards programs, and synchronized devices. 6 weeks earlier, I noticed her Delta Sky Miles account linked itself to our household travel profile again after a software update. One sync error opened the entire timeline. Flight confirmations, seat assignments, upgrade purchases. Kevin upgraded her to Comfort Plus using corporate reward miles 3 days before she told me Andrea planned the trip. That detail bothered me more than the affair itself. Affairs run on fantasy. Administrative planning turns fantasy into intention. Melissa folded her arms across her chest. Defensive posture. You tracked me? She asked. Another redirect. I almost respected the consistency. I audited risk exposure, I answered. Big difference. Her eyes narrowed. You sound insane. Actually, I sound prepared. That landed harder than yelling ever could. Silence stretched between us while her brain recalculated every conversation from the last month. Every dinner, every glance, every moment she assumed I stayed blind. The funny part? I never needed private investigators or hidden cameras. Melissa investigated herself every day through behavior changes. She stopped sending me grocery lists because Kevin started texting her during shopping trips. She increased her gym visits after he complimented her weight loss during a department retreat. She opened a separate checking account through an online bank 2 months ago with paperless statements routed to a private email. Smart move for an amateur. Weak move against somebody who reviews annual tax returns line by line. Last Tuesday, I watched her transfer $4,000 into that account while sitting 10 feet away from me on the couch. She thought airdrop previews hid the bank name. She forgot reflective surfaces exist. Her breathing slowed slightly. Strategy mode replacing panic mode. So what now? She asked carefully. Better question. Finally, I stood, walked toward the pantry, and pulled a second folder from the top shelf. Thicker. Red tab on the side. Melissa's expression changed the second she saw it. What is that? She whispered. I placed the folder beside her suitcase. Post-nuptial draft, I said evenly. My attorney finished it yesterday morning. Her phone lit up again across the counter. Kevin Carter calling. This time, Melissa looked terrified to answer. Melissa stared at the red-tabbed folder like it carried a prison sentence. Her breathing turned shallow again, but this time calculation sat behind the panic. Fear fades fast inside people who spent years manipulating conversations. Strategy survives longer. She silenced Kevin's incoming call with one swipe and squared her shoulders. You talked to an attorney before talking to your wife? She asked. There it was again. That corporate tone. Sharp edges wrapped in wounded innocence. I had heard her use that exact cadence during client negotiations when she wanted leverage before surrender. I talked to an attorney after my wife opened a secret bank account and planned a vacation with another man, I answered. Sequence matters. Melissa grabbed the folder before I could move it away. Fast motion. Nervous energy. She flipped through the first few pages, scanning clauses tied to asset protection, retirement distributions, property allocation, and spousal conduct provisions. Halfway down page 4, her expression shifted again. Confusion this time. What is Harbor Ridge Holdings? She asked quietly. That question changed everything. I watched the realization spread slowly across her face while she searched through the remaining pages for context. 17 years together, and she still believed my salary represented my actual financial position. Funny how marriages survive on assumptions longer than truth. 3 years earlier, my company restructured regional operations after an acquisition deal out of Denver. I took equity compensation instead of annual bonus payouts and routed those shares into Harbor Ridge Holdings. Through a legal partnership vehicle my attorney recommended. Clean structure. Separate entity. Protected growth. Melissa skimmed through the valuation summary attached near the back. Her lips parted slightly when she saw the estimated figure. 6.4 million, she whispered. Current market estimate, I corrected calmly. Before fourth quarter expansion. Her eyes snapped toward me so fast, it almost looked painful. You hid this from me? I insulated it. Big difference again. Melissa dropped into one of the kitchen stools slowly, like her legs lost stability all at once. The affair had cracked open one disaster. The financial revelation opened another. I could almost hear her rebuilding the last few years in real time. Every conversation where she mocked my old pickup truck. Every comment about Kevin's condo downtown. Every passive-aggressive remark about ambition. Affairs poison perception first. Once admiration enters the equation, spouses start measuring value through fantasy math. Kevin wore tailored suits and leased German cars. I wore warehouse boots and tracked freight routes at 5 in the morning. Melissa confused visibility with power. Happens every day in America. Why would you keep this secret? She asked. That question actually earned a laugh out of me. Small laugh. Tired laugh. Because people behave differently around money, I said. Turns out I was right. Her eyes watered for the first time since this started. Real tears finally arrived after financial consequences entered the room. Interesting timing. She looked down at the post-nuptial agreement again and stopped at the infidelity clause. Her breathing caught. You already prepared terms for divorce. I prepared responses for possibilities. Another incoming call flashed across the counter. Kevin again. Persistent guy. Melissa ignored it this time, but the screen lit up with a preview message before fading dark. My eyes landed on it first. So did hers. Kevin's text read, I think your husband called my wife. Silence crushed the room instantly. Melissa looked at me with genuine fear again. This time for a completely different reason. Melissa grabbed her phone so fast the chair legs scraped across the floor. You contacted his wife? She asked. Her voice came out thin this time. Raw. Gone was the polished executive cadence. Gone was the careful emotional choreography. Real panic finally entered the room because collateral damage had stepped onto the board. I picked up my coffee again and held her gaze over the rim of the mug. Yesterday afternoon, I answered calmly. Her name is Rachel. Pediatric nurse. Married 12 years. 2 kids. Nice woman. Melissa looked sick hearing the details. Affairs survive best inside abstraction. Coworker. Friend. Conference buddy. Once names turn into families and mortgages and children, fantasy starts rotting under fluorescent light. Why would you do that? She whispered. I set the mug down slowly. Because she deserved accurate financial and emotional information before her husband spent 4 days at a resort pretending he attended a leadership retreat. Melissa pressed both hands against the counter and stared at the dark phone screen like it might explode again. Kevin said he handled everything, she muttered quietly. Interesting sentence. Handled everything. That told me more than she realized. Men like Kevin always promise clean outcomes while standing nowhere near the consequences. I walked toward the dining room credenza and pulled another envelope from the drawer. Smaller this time. White legal seal across the flap. Melissa watched every movement carefully now. Hypervigilance replaces arrogance once control disappears. Rachel sent me this after our call, I said, placing the envelope beside her. Copy of Kevin's recent refinancing paperwork. Melissa frowned and opened it carefully. 30 seconds later, the blood drained from her face again. He lied to me, she said under her breath. There it was. The real betrayal finally arrived for her. Kevin's financial disclosures showed almost $400,000 in debt tied to failed investments, luxury lease obligations, and revolving credit balances spread across 6 accounts. The downtown condo? Leveraged. The Audi? Leased. The expensive golf weekends? Credit financed. Even the Rolex Kevin flashed during office parties carried a monthly payment schedule. Melissa kept flipping pages faster, searching for some version of him that still matched the fantasy she sold herself. She found none. He told me he was separating from Rachel months ago, she said. He told Rachel the same thing about you. Silence crushed her after that. People cheat because fantasy feels cleaner than ordinary marriage. Then paperwork enters the room. Tax records, debt disclosures, digital timelines. Fantasy dies ugly under documentation. Melissa sank back into the stool and rubbed both temples slowly. How long have you been planning this? She asked. Fair question. I looked toward the hallway where framed family photos still hung perfectly straight. Disney trips. Anniversary dinners. Our daughter Sophie holding college acceptance letters last spring. Funny thing about betrayal. The pictures stay frozen while the people inside them decay quietly. Since the moment I realized your lies carried financial strategy behind them, I answered. Affairs happen every day. Secret banking moves and asset positioning tell a different story. Her eyes snapped upward instantly. Another hit landed. Melissa opened the post-nuptial agreement again and flipped straight toward the disclosure section. Hidden there in plain language sat the clause that triggered her current terror. You froze the joint line of credit? She asked sharply. Temporary hold. I corrected. My attorney filed protective notices this morning. She stood up so quickly the stool tipped sideways behind her. You had zero right to do that. Actually, I said evenly. I had every right once marital funds started financing undisclosed travel arrangements. Her phone vibrated again. Kevin this time sent a voice memo instead of a text. Melissa stared at it without breathing. Then another notification appeared directly underneath it from a number neither of us recognized. Rachel Carter. The preview read, Melissa, I think we both deserve the full truth. I just found something worse. Melissa opened Rachel's message with shaking fingers. Her eyes moved across the screen once, then again slower. I watched the exact second confusion turned into dread. Oh my God, she whispered. Those 3 words carried more honesty than anything she had said all morning. She turned the phone toward me without speaking. Rachel had attached screenshots from Kevin's private email account. Detailed conversations. Timestamped transfers. Calendar entries. One thread carried the subject line, post-divorce transition. Another folder held scanned copies of apartment listings downtown under Melissa's name. Kevin planned everything months ahead. Lease estimates. Furniture packages. Shared budget projections. Even projected timelines tied to our daughter Sophie graduating college next spring. Melissa stared at the screen like somebody reading her own autopsy report. He told me those were hypothetical, she said quietly. I almost felt sorry for her then. Almost. Betrayal works like a pyramid scheme. Everybody thinks they occupy the special tier until documents expose the sales pitch underneath. Rachel's next message arrived seconds later. Check the attachment marked payroll. Melissa clicked it instinctively. Excel sheets opened across the screen. Kevin's compensation records. Quarterly bonus structures. Internal reimbursement filings. One line item carried Melissa's full name beside a consulting payment request totaling $18,000 routed through a shell marketing vendor. My eyes narrowed immediately. Melissa looked confused. What is this? She asked. Good question. I reached for the phone and expanded the metadata section attached to the invoice trail. Filing dates. Authorization codes. Approval chains. Kevin used company reimbursement systems to funnel money toward their travel expenses while disguising the charges as contractor development consulting. Sloppy work. Worse than immoral. Auditable. Melissa, I said carefully, your affair just crossed into corporate fraud territory. The room went dead still after that. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Fear changed shape again. Before, she feared losing the marriage. Now she feared subpoenas, employment investigations, compliance audits, and financial exposure. White-collar panic hits differently. I never approved any of this, she said quickly. Kevin handled expense reports. Himself. Your name sits on the documentation. I pointed toward the approval chain. Digital signatures leave trails. She grabbed the edge of the counter hard enough for her wedding ring to scrape against the granite. He said the company encouraged relationship travel during recruitment events. The sentence sounded pathetic halfway through. Melissa heard it too. Her shoulders collapsed slightly. Kevin had fed her fantasy through luxury dinners, hotel upgrades, executive lounges, and fake confidence. Meanwhile, he buried debt under refinanced credit lines and pushed fraudulent reimbursements through internal accounting. Men like Kevin survive by convincing people they already belong near power. Then pressure arrives, and the entire costume tears apart at the seams. Melissa paced toward the hallway and back again, breathing harder now. If his company audits this, she started. They will, I answered calmly. Rachel already forwarded the files to a corporate compliance attorney. She stopped moving immediately. You plan this together? No, I said. Rachel planned survival. Same as me. Melissa covered her mouth with one hand and stared toward the family photos again. I could almost see her replaying every choice backward. Every hidden lunch. Every fake conference. Every text deleted inside parking garages before coming home to dinner with me and Sophie. Affairs feel glamorous until accountants enter the story. Her phone buzzed once more. This time Kevin sent a single sentence. No charm. No confidence. No polished executive tone. Just panic stripped raw. Melissa, if anybody contacts human resources, we are both finished. Melissa read Kevin's message 3 times before lowering the phone slowly onto the counter. Her hands shook harder now. Earlier panic carried emotion. This version carried calculation. Human resources meant digital audits, device reviews, expense tracing, email recovery, compliance interviews. Corporate investigations turn private stupidity into permanent documentation. This can still stop here, she said suddenly. Her voice sharpened again, trying to reclaim structure. Rachel is emotional. Kevin is panicking. Everybody just needs to calm down before people destroy careers. I leaned against the island and watched her rebuild the same manipulation framework that carried her affair this far. Redirect the damage. Minimize the conduct. Repackage betrayal as confusion. Careers already got destroyed, I answered quietly. You just noticed the smoke. Melissa pressed both palms flat against the granite countertop and stared downward. You wanted this, she said after a long silence. You waited for everything to collapse. Wrong. I waited for clarity. Big difference. 3 months earlier, I almost confronted her after spotting a hotel Wi-Fi auto-connect notification synced through our home tablet. Kevin's last name appeared beside the saved network history. Aspen Ridge Executive Suite. One-click open weeks of metadata. Device pairings. Shared streaming logins. Reservation confirmations routed through hidden aliases. My first instinct pushed toward confrontation. Anger always rushes faster than strategy. Then I remembered something an old operations director told me years ago during a fraud investigation at our shipping company. People reveal the full scam once they think the first lie survived. So I stayed quiet. Best decision I ever made. Melissa kept talking while pacing now, faster each minute. Kevin said his company tolerated executive relationships. He said reimbursement approvals happened automatically. He said Rachel already planned to leave. I almost smiled hearing it all stacked together. Excuses collapse ugly once spoken out loud in daylight. Melissa, I said carefully. Do you hear how often your defense starts with Kevin said? She froze immediately. Another clean hit. Truth cuts harder when delivered calmly. Her eyes drifted toward the hallway again, where Sophie's senior portrait still sat on the entry table beside college brochures and acceptance letters. Our daughter spent 4 years building scholarships and internship connections, while her mother secretly planned apartment leases with another man using fraudulent reimbursement money. Family collapse rarely arrives through screaming matches. It arrives through administrative paperwork and quiet deception spread over time. Melissa rubbed her forehead slowly. What happens now? She asked. Real fear again. Finally stripped clean of ego. I walked back toward the island and opened the red-tabbed folder one more time. Inside sat 2 separate document stacks. The post-nuptial agreement rested on top. Underneath sat another packet stamped with my attorney's firm seal. Melissa noticed the second stack immediately. What is that? She asked carefully. Emergency filing draft, I answered. Prepared in case marital assets started disappearing electronically. Her eyes widened. You think I would steal from you? I think panic makes people creative. Silence settled hard between us after that. Then her phone buzzed again. This time it came from Sophie. Our daughter rarely called during class hours. Melissa answered instantly. Hey, sweetheart, she said, forcing warmth into her voice. She listened for 3 seconds before the color vanished from her face again. Her eyes locked onto mine slowly while Sophie kept speaking through the phone. Melissa whispered one sentence so quietly it almost sounded broken. What do you mean human resources already contacted you? Melissa pulled the phone away from her ear slowly, like the device had turned radioactive in her hand. Her lips trembled once before she forced them tight again. Sophie got contacted by her internship coordinator, she said quietly. They asked whether she had any connection to an internal compliance review involving Kevin. I closed my eyes for 1 second after hearing that. That part hit harder than I expected. Affairs destroy marriages first. Then they start collecting innocent bystanders like shrapnel. Melissa looked completely lost now. The executive mask finally cracked beyond repair. She sounded embarrassed, Melissa whispered. She thought she did something wrong. I stared toward the family portrait beside the entry table. Sophie wore her University of Texas sweatshirt in that picture, smiling so wide her eyes disappeared. 17 years of bedtime stories, soccer tournaments, science fairs, tuition planning, and college visits reduced to one compliance phone call tied to a man named Kevin Carter. This is why secrecy matters, I said quietly. People think betrayal stays private. It spreads. Melissa wiped tears from her face quickly, angry at herself for crying. I never wanted Sophie involved. Intentions stopped matching months ago. That landed hard. She knew it too. Her phone buzzed again before either of us spoke further. Kevin this time. Another message. Human Resources suspended my access badge. Rachel moved money out of our joint account. Call me now. Melissa stared at the text silently. Earlier she protected him, defended him, rationalized him. Now she looked at his messages like somebody staring at a collapsing building while realizing they signed the lease inside it. He told me he loved me, she said quietly after a long pause. I leaned back against the counter and folded my arms. Kevin loved escape, I answered. Big difference. Her breathing hitched slightly again. Affairs thrive inside isolation bubbles. Secret dinners, hidden texts, hotel lounges far from ordinary life. Then reality enters carrying account statements, legal filings, and consequences attached to children. Fantasy suffocates fast after that. Melissa sat down slowly and opened Kevin's voice memo at last. His tone sounded completely different from the polished confidence I heard during company parties over the years. Fast breathing, frantic pacing, fear. Melissa, listen carefully, Kevin said through the speaker. Rachel found the reimbursement files because somebody accessed my archived emails remotely. Human Resources already froze my corporate accounts. Compliance wants interviews Monday morning. You cannot talk to anybody else until we align our story. Melissa ended the recording halfway through. Her eyes closed tight. Align our story, she repeated under her breath. That phrase poisoned the entire room. Because there it was finally. Clear. Undeniable. Coordinated deception. Strategic lying. Shared narrative management. Her affair stopped being emotional confusion a long time ago. This thing evolved into operational dishonesty. Did you help him alter reports? I asked calmly. Melissa looked horrified immediately. No, fast answer. Real answer. I believe that one. Then Kevin used your name to legitimize spending trails. She covered her face with both hands for several seconds. Silence stretched long enough for the kitchen clock to sound louder than usual. Then Melissa lowered her hands and looked straight at me for the first time all morning. You already decided this marriage is over, haven't you? She asked. Honest question. Honest tone. Maybe the first truly honest moment between us in months. I answered carefully because truth deserves precision. The marriage ended when protecting the affair became more important than protecting the family. Tears rolled down her face again after that. Quiet ones this time. Exhausted ones. Her phone buzzed once more against the counter. Different number. Unknown caller. Melissa almost ignored it until a voicemail preview appeared beneath the screen. Corporate Compliance Division. Immediate response requested regarding financial misconduct investigation involving Kevin Carter and Melissa Walker. Melissa listened to the voicemail with the phone pressed tight against her ear while her other hand gripped the edge of the counter hard enough to shake. Every sentence from corporate compliance peeled another layer off the fantasy she built around Kevin. Formal interview request. Preservation notice regarding electronic communications. Immediate suspension pending review. Standard language. Brutal impact. When the voicemail ended, she stayed frozen for several seconds, staring at nothing. Then she whispered the sentence every collapsing person eventually says. This got out of control. I looked at her quietly across the kitchen island. Control ended the second secrecy entered the marriage, I answered. She lowered the phone slowly and sank into the stool again. Her suitcase still stood near the front door exactly where she left it almost 2 hours earlier. Ready for a luxury resort. Ready for champagne dinners and hidden weekends. Now it looked ridiculous sitting there beside legal paperwork and compliance investigations. Melissa rubbed both hands over her face. Smudged mascara darkened her fingertips. Kevin said he protected me, she muttered. Kevin protected Kevin. Another silence followed that. Heavy. 1. Mature marriages die quietly long before divorce paperwork arrives. They die in hidden tabs, deleted texts, private accounts, and emotional outsourcing. Melissa finally looked toward me again with swollen eyes and exhausted posture. Did you ever plan to forgive me? She asked. Honest question. Wrong timing. I thought carefully before answering because pain deserves accuracy. I might have forgiven an affair, I said slowly. I cannot trust coordinated deception tied to money, legal exposure, and our daughter's future. Her eyes closed immediately after hearing Sophie mentioned again. That remained the deepest wound in the room. Human Resources reaching our daughter crossed a line neither of us expected this fast. Melissa grabbed her phone and opened her message thread with Kevin one final time. Hundreds of texts stretched across months. Hotel confirmations. Running jokes. Complaints about work. Complaints about me. Screenshots of apartment furniture. At the very top sat his newest message still unread. Delete everything before Monday. Melissa stared at it silently for several seconds before pressing one button. Block contact. Then another. Delete thread. I watched the entire thing happen without speaking. Interesting moment. People think endings arrive dramatically. Usually they arrive through small finger movements across glowing screens. Melissa set the phone down afterward and looked completely empty. Rachel was right, she whispered. He was building an exit plan the entire time. Most affairs operate like job interviews, I answered. Everybody presents ideal versions until contracts appear. She gave a bitter laugh through tears after that. Tiny sound. Broken sound. You sound like you studied this. I almost answered immediately. Then I stopped. Because the truth carried more weight than she realized. 3 years earlier, our freight company uncovered a procurement fraud operation involving a senior logistics manager. Fake vendors. Hidden reimbursements. Secret relationships influencing approvals. I helped internal investigators trace transaction patterns during the audit. Same behaviors. Same arrogance. Same belief that compartmentalized lies stay separated forever. They never do. Data always merges eventually. Melissa wiped her eyes again and glanced toward the red-tabbed folder still resting beside the untouched suitcase. What happens if I cooperate with the investigation? She asked carefully. Lower exposure, I answered. Maybe job retention, depending on what they recover. And us? That question hung between us longer than any other today. Before I could answer, my phone vibrated in my pocket. Unknown number. Dallas area code. I almost ignored it until the voicemail preview appeared across the screen. Mr. Walker, this is Daniel Reeves from Internal Compliance. We recovered additional archived communications involving your wife and Kevin Carter. There is something you need to hear before Monday. Melissa watched my face while the voicemail preview sat glowing across my phone screen between us. Fear changes people in layers. Earlier, she feared exposure, then financial collapse, then career destruction. Now she feared information she had never even imagined. I played the message on speaker. Daniel Reeves spoke with the calm precision of somebody who spent years cleaning corporate disasters for a living. Mr. Walker, during recovery of deleted communications tied to the compliance investigation, our forensic team located archived planning documents involving Kevin Carter and Melissa Walker. Several discussions referenced timing recommendations connected to marital separation, asset positioning, and potential leverage regarding inherited holdings. I strongly recommend you contact legal counsel before Monday. The voicemail ended. Silence filled the kitchen again, but this silence felt different. Colder. Cleaner. Melissa stared at me with genuine shock. Inherited holdings? She whispered. I said nothing at first because my brain had already started connecting pieces backward. Kevin asking about Harbor Ridge. Melissa suddenly showing interest in trusts and valuation structures months earlier. Questions about beneficiary designations disguised as casual dinner conversation. My attorney warned me once that betrayal grows teeth when money enters the room. Looks like he was right. Ethan, Melissa said. Carefully. I swear to you, I never planned anything against your assets. I studied her face for several seconds before answering. Funny thing about long marriages. Eventually, you learn the difference between rehearsed emotion and real fear. This time she sounded honest. Too late for honesty to save anything, but honest nonetheless. Maybe you did not, I said quietly. Kevin definitely did. Melissa lowered herself into the chair slowly again, exhaustion replacing panic for the first time all day. I thought he cared about me, she said. Kevin cared about access, I answered. Access to status. Access to money. Access to escape. Men like that confuse opportunity with love. Her eyes drifted toward the untouched suitcase beside the door. Earlier, that bag represented excitement. Then secrecy. Then disaster. Now it looked like evidence from another person's life. Melissa laughed once under her breath. Bitter sound. Empty sound. I traded 17 years for a man drowning in debt and fraud investigations. I folded the red-tabbed folder closed carefully and slid it back toward myself. You traded stability for adrenaline, I corrected. People do it every day. Tears rolled down her face again, slower this time. No dramatic breakdown, just exhaustion settling into the bones. What happens Monday? She asked. Lawyers, I answered. Interviews. Financial reviews. Damage control. She nodded weakly like somebody reading a sentence already finalized by the court. Then she looked directly at me one final time. Did you ever hate me through all this? Honest question again. I thought about it carefully because hate would have been easier, cleaner, simpler. But hate burns loud. What I felt arrived quieter than that. No, I said at last. I grieved you. That broke something inside her harder than anger ever could. Melissa covered her mouth and cried silently while I walked toward the front door and lifted her suitcase upright beside her. You can stay in the guest room tonight, I said calmly. Tomorrow we start separating finances formally. She nodded without arguing. No fight left. No illusion left. Just consequences. I reached for the hallway light switch and paused beside Sophie's graduation photo one last time. Funny thing about betrayal. Most people think the explosion destroys everything instantly. Truth works slower than that. First it exposes character. Then it exposes motives. Finally, it exposes who kept building quietly while everybody else chased fantasy. My phone buzzed again as I turned off the kitchen light. One final email notification from Daniel Reeves appeared across the screen. Subject line: recovered audio file between Kevin Carter and Melissa Walker.